Chosen one, something happened while you were sleeping. You did not hear it. You did not see it. You did not feel the moment it occurred. But in the realm you cannot see, a council convened concerning you. A conversation unfolded in the spirit with your name at the center of it. And what was decided there has already begun rearranging your tomorrow. This is why the atmosphere around you feels different. This is why certain delays suddenly feel fragile. This is why what once resisted you now seems uncertain. A secret meeting in the spirit just changed your timeline. You thought the silence meant nothing was moving. You assumed the waiting meant you had been forgotten. But I was never idle. While you were wrestling with doubt, I was issuing decrees. While you were trying to understand the delay, I was overturning it. What was meant to stall you was reviewed. What was meant to exhaust you was challenged. What was meant to discourage you was denied authority. There are conversations about you that the enemy never expected me to interrupt. And I did not merely interrupt them, I overruled them. There was an accusation presented. A whisper that said you were not ready. A suggestion that said you should remain hidden. A strategy designed to keep you circling the same mountain another year. But I stood as your defender. I spoke as your advocate. I reminded the unseen realm of who I called you to be before you ever doubted it. And when my voice filled that place, timelines shifted. You have been measuring progress by visible signs. I measure by spiritual authorization. And authorization has already been granted. Do you understand what that means? It means what looked delayed was being rescheduled for acceleration. It means what seemed blocked was being rerouted. It means the very resistance that tried to hold you back became the evidence used to justify your promotion. The enemy's argument became the proof of your qualification. Because pressure did not break you. Silence did not silence you. Delay did not redefine you. You remained standing. And heaven noticed. This is why you feel a strange tension lately, like something is about to break open. It is not anxiety. It is anticipation. It is the sound of spiritual paperwork being finalized. It is the echo of a decision already made. You are not waiting for approval anymore. Approval has already been spoken. There are people who thought they had more time to ignore you. There are situations that assumed they could continue postponing you. There are doors that believed they could stay closed indefinitely. But the ruling changed. The timeline adjusted. What was scheduled for later has been stamped now. And here is the mystery: you did nothing dramatic to trigger it. No grand announcement. No visible shift. No viral moment. It happened in quiet obedience. It happened in unseen faithfulness. It happened because you did not walk away when it would have been easy to quit. You thought those small acts of perseverance were insignificant. They were entered into evidence. I am not just moving you forward, I am restoring lost time. The years that felt swallowed by confusion are being recalculated. The opportunities that seemed missed are being reconsidered. You are stepping into a season where acceleration will feel unnatural. Things will align faster than your mind can process. Conversations will open without effort. Connections will form without striving. And you will wonder how it all changed so quickly. It changed because of a meeting you were never meant to attend. But you will feel the aftermath. Pay attention to the sudden clarity. Pay attention to the unusual favor. Pay attention to the subtle shift in how others respond to you. Some will not know why they feel drawn to support you. Others will not understand why their opposition toward you suddenly weakens. The spiritual atmosphere around your name has been adjusted. Do not shrink now. This is not the moment to question your worth. This is the moment to align your expectation with what has already been decided. Stop preparing for another season of delay. Stop bracing for disappointment. Stop rehearsing worst-case outcomes. You are not on the same timeline you were on last month. And here is what makes this even more powerful. The enemy does not yet realize how much ground he lost in that meeting. He still believes you are bound by the old schedule. He still assumes you are limited by the former restriction. That is why he has not adjusted his strategy. He is operating on outdated information. You are about to move in ways that confuse what tried to confine you. But there is something you must understand before the acceleration becomes visible, something about why the meeting was necessary in the first place, and what it revealed about the assignment on your life that you have only partially understood. Because what was discussed about you was far bigger than simple promotion. It was about impact. And when you discover what was actually authorized in that unseen conversation, you will realize this is not just a shift in timing. It is a shift in magnitude. Chosen one, the meeting was not about giving you something small. It was not about minor relief or temporary ease. It was about scale. It was about influence. It was about correcting a distortion in your perception of yourself. Because somewhere along the journey, you began to shrink the vision to make the delay make sense. You told yourself, maybe it was never that big. You adjusted your expectation to protect your heart. But in that secret spiritual discussion, heaven did not downgrade your calling. It defended it. There was a moment recently, yes, that quiet moment you brushed off, when you almost convinced yourself to settle. Maybe it was after another unanswered message. Maybe it was after watching someone else advance while you stood still. Maybe it was when you thought, I'm tired of hoping like this. That thought was real. That weariness was honest. But what you did not see was how that very moment was brought up in the spirit as evidence of your endurance. The fact that you felt tired yet did not quit spoke louder than you realized. Think about a courtroom for a moment. When a case is reviewed, everything is presented: failures, weaknesses, history. The enemy tried to present your doubts as proof you were unstable. He tried to present your delays as proof you were unqualified. But I presented your consistency. I presented the nights you still whispered a prayer even when you felt foolish. I presented the times you chose integrity when compromise would have been easier. I presented the unseen tears as seeds, not weaknesses. And the verdict shifted. Let me give you a real example so you understand how timelines change. There was a man who trained for years for a position he never received. Every time he came close, someone else was chosen. He began to question his preparation. He considered changing paths. But he kept refining his skill quietly. One unexpected day, a crisis removed 3 leaders at once. The company needed someone immediately who understood the system deeply and could step in without chaos. The one who had been overlooked was suddenly the only logical choice. What looked like rejection had been preparation for sudden elevation. The delay was not denial, it was timing alignment. You have been living your own version of that story. The hidden meeting in the spirit addressed a coming shift that requires you ready, not merely available. If the door had opened earlier, you would have stepped through without the depth you now carry. The weight you have gained through waiting is what will allow you to stand when acceleration comes. Because acceleration without maturity becomes collapse. But acceleration with refinement becomes dominion. Have you noticed how differently you respond to pressure now compared to a year ago? Situations that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. Conversations that once intimidated you no longer shake you. You call it growth. I call it qualification. There was also a spiritual legality involved in that meeting. Certain cycles had to be reviewed. Patterns that lingered in your family line. Mindsets that tried to repeat themselves. You thought you were just fighting discouragement. In reality, you were confronting inherited limitations. And when you refused to surrender to them, you broke precedent. That is not small. That is generational. This is why the acceleration is not only about you receiving something. It is about you becoming someone who carries authority. The timeline shifted because your capacity expanded. But here is the tension: you may not feel dramatically different today. You might wake up tomorrow and everything appears normal. The same room. The same routine. The same responsibilities. That is how spiritual shifts often manifest at first, invisibly. Think about a seed underground. The transformation begins in darkness long before the surface changes. Roots form before leaves appear. Strength builds before visibility comes. Do not despise this in-between sensation. In fact, there was an experience you had recently, perhaps subtle, where something inside you felt calm in a situation that should have triggered you. That was evidence. That was proof the internal shift already began. You did not react the way you used to. You did not spiral the way you once did. You thought, maybe I'm just tired. No. You are stabilizing. And here is another thought you have had but rarely voice: what if this never changes? That whisper tried to anchor you to the old timeline. But the meeting in the spirit addressed that fear directly. The future you are stepping into was defended before you could sabotage it with doubt. There are conversations about you happening even now in places you cannot access. Doors being considered. Names being mentioned. Opportunities being weighed. The acceleration does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrives as a quiet invitation that feels almost too simple. Do not overlook small openings. They may be entry points to larger shifts. And yet, there is something even deeper that was discussed in that secret meeting, something about why resistance intensified right before this shift. The opposition was not random. The pressure was strategic. The discouragement was timed. Because the enemy sensed the review before you did. He felt the shift in authority before you perceived it. And what he attempted in response reveals just how significant this timeline change truly is. Chosen one, the resistance intensified because something was about to be signed in your favor. The enemy often senses movement in the spirit before you see manifestation in the natural. That is why, right before this shift, things felt unusually heavy. Small problems felt magnified. Minor misunderstandings turned into major frustrations. Old thoughts you thought you overcame tried to resurface. You wondered, why now? I was finally feeling stable. It was not random. It was reaction. When a verdict is about to be overturned, opposition grows louder. Not because it is winning, but because it is losing ground. There was a week recently when you felt unusually drained. Not physically alone, but emotionally. Conversations felt heavier. Motivation felt thinner. You questioned whether you misheard God about your future. That internal dialogue was not weakness, it was spiritual turbulence. You were standing at the edge of a timeline correction, and the atmosphere was adjusting around you. Do you remember how David felt before he stepped into his kingship? He had already been anointed, yet he still faced caves, betrayal, and pursuit. There is a scripture that carries a human ache within it. David says in Psalm 27 verse 13, "Would have lost heart, unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." That is not a robotic confession. That is a tired man admitting he almost gave up. He almost let go. The only thing that kept him breathing in faith was the stubborn belief that goodness would show up before he died. You have had your own Psalm 27 verse 13 moments. Moments where you whispered, "If something doesn't change, I don't know how much longer I can carry this." And yet, you kept believing, even if it was messy belief. Even if it was mixed with questions. Even if it was whispered through tears instead of shouted with confidence. That kind of faith is powerful. It is raw. It is real. And it was presented in that secret meeting as evidence that you are not finished. The enemy miscalculated you. He assumed fatigue meant surrender. He assumed silence meant withdrawal. He assumed delay meant decay. But heaven saw endurance. There is something else you need to understand. The meeting in the Spirit did not just change your external timeline, it recalibrated internal permissions. Some of the limits you placed on yourself are expiring. You had unconsciously accepted ceilings. You said things like, "People like me don't reach that level," or "Maybe I should be realistic." That realism was subtle self-protection. But it also became a quiet agreement with limitation. That agreement has been revoked. Think about how a contract works. Once signed, it holds authority until it expires or is challenged. In the Spirit, certain narratives about your life had been running unchallenged for years. This is as far as you go. This is your pattern. This is your capacity. But in that hidden discussion, those narratives were questioned. And when truth enters the conversation, limitation loses legal ground. You may notice in the coming days a strange boldness rising within you. Not arrogance. Not recklessness. But clarity. You may feel less intimidated speaking your ideas. Less apologetic about your dreams. Less willing to shrink in rooms where you once felt small. That is not ego. That is alignment. And here is the beautiful irony. The enemy's last wave of pressure was meant to exhaust you into quitting. Instead, it documented your resilience. It proved you can carry more than you thought. It showed that even when discouraged, you remain anchored. Have you ever noticed how storms sometimes clear the air? The pressure builds, the wind rages, the sky darkens, and then suddenly everything feels cleaner. Lighter. The resistance you experienced was like that storm. It was loud because it was passing through, not because it was staying. But do not mistake this shift as instant ease. Acceleration does not mean absence of challenge. It means momentum with backing. It means when you move, you are supported. When you step, ground forms beneath you. When you speak, your words carry unusual weight. There is an assignment attached to this timeline change. And here is where curiosity deepens. The meeting was not only about promoting you, it was about positioning you in a place where your influence interrupts cycles for others. Your story is about to become a reference point. People who once overlooked you will quietly study you. Those who doubted you will wonder what shifted. And some will not celebrate at first. Because acceleration exposes insecurity in others. When your pace increases, it confronts those who are stagnant. Do not be surprised if certain relationships feel different. Not everyone can walk into the next season with you. Some were assignments for endurance, not companions for elevation. This is why the Spirit handled this transition carefully. The timeline was adjusted in secret because public shifts require private authorization. What was discussed about you carries ripple effects you have not yet imagined. There is still one layer you have not seen. One detail about that spiritual meeting that explains why this acceleration could not happen last year, and why it had to happen now. And when you understand that timing, you will stop grieving what did not work. Because you will see it was protecting something far greater than you knew. Chosen one, it could not happen last year because you were still becoming who you are now. You thought you were ready. In many ways, you were. But readiness is not just talent or desire, it is depth. It is inner stability. It is knowing who you are when applause is absent and when criticism is loud. Last year, you still carried certain insecurities that would have been amplified by sudden promotion. You still wrestled with the need to be validated. You still felt the urge to prove yourself. If the acceleration had come then, it might have fed wounds instead of fulfilling purpose. So I protected you with delay. That truth may sting at first. Because you interpreted delay as distance. You wondered if I had stepped back. But sometimes protection feels like postponement. Sometimes mercy feels like silence. You were not being ignored, you were being fortified. There were private battles you had to win before public doors could open. Remember that situation where you were misunderstood and chose not to defend yourself aggressively? The old version of you would have fought harder, spoken louder, demanded recognition. But you felt restrained. You felt a quiet whisper say, "Let it go." That was growth. That was maturity forming. You were learning that identity does not need constant defense. That lesson was essential. Because where you are going, criticism will increase before affirmation does. There is a scripture that carries a warmth many overlook. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11 says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." Notice it does not say immediately. It says in its time. There is a tenderness in that verse. It acknowledges that beauty is often invisible until the season ripens. Fruit plucked too early is bitter. Opportunities forced too soon collapse under pressure. Timing is not punishment, it is precision. The meeting in the Spirit addressed timing with surgical care. It reviewed your growth, your endurance, your responses under pressure. It was not rushed. Because what is about to unfold carries weight. You have also changed internally in ways you barely noticed. A year ago, you would have equated success with visibility. Now you value peace more than applause. A year ago, you feared being overlooked. Now you fear being misaligned. That shift is significant. It means your ambition has been purified. It means you are less likely to chase and more willing to steward. There was an experience recently, perhaps subtle, where you felt content in a quiet moment, even without external progress. That peace was new. That stability was evidence. You were no longer panicking about the future. You were learning trust. And trust is the foundation of acceleration. Because when momentum increases, trust keeps you grounded. When doors open quickly, trust prevents anxiety. When influence grows, trust guards humility. But there is another reason the timeline shifted now and not before. Certain people had to move out of proximity first. Not as punishment. Not as rejection. But as preparation. Some individuals were tied to the old version of you. They knew your past insecurities. They reinforced outdated narratives. If acceleration had come while you were still entangled in those dynamics, it would have been complicated. The Spirit untangled what needed to be untangled before promoting you. You called it loss. I called it alignment. Have you noticed how some connections faded without dramatic conflict? Conversations slowed. Invitations stopped. The distance felt natural, almost unexplainable. That was rearrangement. Not everyone assigned to your endurance is assigned to your expansion. And now, the environment around you is cleaner. Not empty, cleaner. There is space for new alliances. Space for mentors. Space for partnerships that resonate with who you are becoming, not who you were. The acceleration will not feel chaotic. It will feel synchronized. Opportunities will connect like puzzle pieces instead of random fragments. Conversations will build on each other. You will see patterns forming where before there was confusion. That is because the meeting in the spirit did not just adjust your timeline, it aligned circumstances. But here is where you must stay alert. Do not let humility turn into hesitation. There is a difference between being grounded and playing small. When the door opens, step through it. Do not overthink. Do not delay yourself because the pace feels unfamiliar. The speed will feel different because you are used to resistance. Acceleration can feel suspicious to someone accustomed to struggle. You might ask, is this too easy? But ease does not mean lack of effort. It means alignment. When a key fits its lock, it turns smoothly. That does not mean the key is weak, it means it is designed for that door. You were designed for what is ahead. And yet, there is still one final revelation about that secret meeting you have not heard. Something that explains why this shift carries generational implications. Something that reveals why your obedience mattered more than you realized. Because what was authorized was not only a new pace. It was a new legacy. Chosen one. This was never only about you. The meeting in the spirit carried your name, yes, but it also carried your bloodline. It carried the prayers of those who came before you and the silent hopes of those who will come after you. What shifted was not just your schedule. It was a generational trajectory. There were cycles that tried to repeat themselves through your family. Patterns of limitation. Patterns of settling. Patterns of almost but not quite breakthrough. You have felt it before. That strange awareness that you were fighting something older than your own experiences. You wondered why certain fears seemed inherited. Why certain struggles felt familiar even when you never chose them. You were not imagining it. But here is what happened in that unseen conversation. Your endurance became the interruption. Because you did not give up, a pattern lost permission. Because you chose integrity, a cycle weakened. Because you kept believing, even imperfectly, a ceiling cracked. The timeline did not just accelerate forward, it broke sideways through repetition. You may not see the full evidence immediately. Generational shifts often begin subtly. It might show up in a younger sibling who suddenly dreams bigger. It might show up in a child who grows up without the insecurity you carried. It might show up in the way you respond differently than those before you did. You are modeling a new pattern. And this is why the opposition was so intense. The enemy was not only resisting your promotion, he was protecting a cycle. When cycles are threatened, pressure increases. But when cycles break, peace follows. Have you noticed the peace creeping in lately? Not constant, but noticeable. A steadiness. A quiet confidence that you cannot fully explain. That is the residue of that meeting. That is what it feels like when heaven backs you. There is also something else you must understand. Acceleration will require courage. The new timeline is not passive. It is participatory. Doors will open, but you must walk through. Invitations will come, but you must say yes. Ideas will stir, but you must act. This is where many hesitate. You prayed for movement, but when movement arrives, it feels vulnerable. Visibility means exposure. Growth means risk. Expansion means you cannot hide in old comfort zones. Yet remember this, you are not stepping into this alone. The same authority that shifted your timeline will sustain it. Think back to moments when you felt unqualified in the past. You entered rooms unsure of yourself. You tried things without full confidence. And somehow, you survived. Somehow, you learned. Somehow, you grew. That was training. That was rehearsal. Now you are not just surviving new spaces, you are meant to influence them. You will begin to notice subtle confirmations. A stranger's affirmation that echoes something you prayed about. An unexpected opportunity aligned with a private desire. A door opening in the exact area you once feared was closed forever. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations that the verdict has already been issued. And here is a gentle whisper for your heart: stop apologizing for what is about to happen. Stop shrinking your excitement so others feel comfortable. Stop downplaying your progress to avoid envy. You can remain humble without minimizing your growth. There is a difference between arrogance and ownership. Ownership says, "I receive what God has done." Arrogance says, "I did this alone." You are not alone. As acceleration unfolds, some people will say, "It happened so fast." They will not see the years of quiet preparation. They will not see the nights of doubt you pushed through. They will not see the tears, the discipline, the restraint. But you will know. And heaven knows. That is enough. There will also be moments where the old thoughts try to revisit. What if this doesn't last? When that whisper comes, remember the secret meeting. Remember that this shift was not random emotion. It was reviewed. It was discussed. It was authorized. You are not riding temporary hype, you are walking in adjusted destiny. If this message is stirring something in you, hold on to it. Let it settle deep. Quietly align your heart. And if your spirit agrees, let that agreement show. Sometimes even a simple act of engagement, a quiet like or subscription, is a way of saying, "I receive this word." Small responses carry spiritual symbolism. Alignment matters. The next days may feel unusually active. Pay attention. Do not dismiss opportunities because they arrive in ordinary packaging. The new timeline may begin with a simple email, a casual conversation, a small decision that seems insignificant. But seeds do not look like forests at first glance. And here is the final revelation. The meeting was not only about correcting delay, it was about synchronizing you with a larger movement unfolding beyond your awareness. There are others being positioned simultaneously. Paths are converging. Assignments are intertwining. When you step forward, you will collide with purpose that feels almost orchestrated. Because it is. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are aligned. And what begins to unfold next will confirm that the shift was real, not just in feeling, but in undeniable manifestation.